we can see and measure. So which law? Which is your favourite?
What's various laws.
Just name one.
No, I'm not going to fall into that. I'm just saying.
Well, you can't come on the radio and say there's loads of great laws, and then I say, could you tell me one of them? You have to tell me one of them, Anne.
No, I don't.
Well, obviously you don't. It's not the law.
No, the law.
Well, except possibly it is the law. So what do you like most? What do you like?
Do you ever notice how some callers walk into a debate thinking they're about to deliver a masterclass, and instead end up getting completely taken apart? Yeah? This is one of those moments. This caller genuinely believed they could defend the Conservative government, and within minutes, every single argument they had began to crumble. From claiming Rishi Sunak is somehow a safer pair of hands, to insisting Brexit handed Britain back control, it all fell apart faster than they could finish a sentence. Because when you strip away the slogans and the nostalgia, there's not much left to hold on to. The moment James O'Brien pressed for specifics, the entire defence collapsed. Every excuse sounded thinner, every justification more desperate, until all that was left were contradictions and silence. And that's exactly why this call is worth watching from start to finish. It's not just a clash of opinions, it's a slow-motion unravelling of the talking points that have dominated British politics for years. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because what happens next is brutal.
Yeah, I've been listening to the debate, and I think that whilst I can't defend the Tories in their entirety, there's a lot of mistakes, and I agree the country is very, very broken. I do think that Sunak is the safer pair of hands when it comes to the economy.
Safer than who?
Safer than Labour. And the reason I'm saying that is that the Labour government, last time they were in power, when Cameron took over, left a note on the desk to say there was no more money in the coffers. They bankrupted the country.
No, you've forgotten the 2008 global financial crisis.
No, I haven't.
No, you have.
No, I haven't.
No,
there were pension rates.
You clearly have.
Trust me. Please don't put words in my mouth, because
I didn't. I was telling you the words you hadn't said.
I went through and experienced very heavily the financial crisis in 2008. But nonetheless, Labour were irresponsible in the spending, having raided pensions and everything else. And that balance has got to be heard on this conversation, whether you like it or not. Well, you can say all you like, and when you say that Brexit was a ridiculous situation, well, there's 51% of the country voted for it. We're not all ridiculous. We're quite intelligent, quite informed.
What's the best bit of it?
What's the best bit of it?
Yeah, what's the biggest benefit?
I don't think that the full benefit has been executed by the Tories.
No, but the bits that have been executed, what's your favourite?
Because we've got independence.
No, I mean as in something that we can see and something we can see and measure. So which law? Which is your favourite?
Various laws.
Just name one.
No, I'm not going to fall into that. I'm just saying.
Well, you can't come on the radio and say there's loads of great laws, and then I say, could you tell me one of them? You have to tell me one of them, Anne.
No, I don't.
Well, obviously you don't. It's not the law.
No, the law.
Well, except possibly it is the law. So what do you like most? What do you like?
However, what hasn't happened by the Tories?
With respect, that's just ignorance.
No, it's not ignorance.
Well, give me an example then.
Give me an example. What I'm going on to say is, what the Tories have failed to do
Can I have one example?
Brexit. No, I don't need to give you an example.
You do, otherwise everyone's going to think you're very silly.
The conversation.
No, you have to give me one example.
The conversation is really, really biased in
It's not biased. It's biased in favour of evidence and examples.
And they're all as bad as each other.
So what's your example? What's your example?
I've given you the example.
You haven't. You just used words like control with no proof. So what's your proof that we have more control? Go on then.
I've got proof. Don't look it up. Don't Google it.
No, you can't say I've got proof. You can't say I've got proof.
At the end of the day,
go and Google it.
You have got.
So give me some proof.
Parties here that are all as bad as each other.
Yes, except they're not all as bad as each other, because people on the other side of this argument, if we can use that word very, very loosely, they will point at things that have happened. For example, having to choose the 12 people that could attend the funeral of your 16-year-old son. That is not something that makes Labour the same as the Conservatives. But we're talking about Brexit. We're talking... let me speak, please. And then you go back to that note as well in the in the Treasury, which actually nudged back to something that Reggie Maudling did when he was the Conservative Chancellor and left a very similar message. There's no money left, old Pip, or something like that for his Labour
that's a long
success.
Time ago. But,
well, you're talking about 14 years ago, so your point is ridiculous.
No, it's not. It's a big event that has led to, along with COVID and
why
the money
do you
that
think?
was paid out.
Why do you think that every economy in the world, arguably, certainly in the free world, followed the advice of Alistair Darling and and Gordon Brown when it came to dealing with the global financial crisis and the policy of quantitative easing? When Gordon Brown went to France, even though he hadn't actually been invited, and persuaded, I think, Sarkozy to let him speak to all the EU leaders or the European Eurozone leaders, and Alistair Darling flew to Washington to speak to America. Why do you think they all took the advice of the two Labour politicians? Anne?
Sorry, say that again.
Why do you think every government in the world, practically, followed the advice of Gordon Brown and Alistair Darling when it came to emerging from the global financial crisis of 2008?
You tell me. You tell me.
Because they were brilliant.
Really?
Well, no, that's my
brilliant?
answer. It's your turn. It's your turn now.
Well, my turn is to say they weren't that brilliant because all they were doing was storing up a load of problems that got taken over in 2010.
No,
now,
but those are just words. They don't actually mean anything. They were solving.
They're not words.
No, well, they are words, Anne. We can at least agree that they're words that you said.
But it's 2010. There's no money in the budget.
No, the 2010 is a consequence of the global financial crisis of 2008, and the direction of traffic at the time was positive. Alistair Darling was improving a situation that the Tories then came in and tried to address with austerity. And the fact that you have to cling to something as ridiculous as a 40...
It's not clinging to it.
Well, hang on, you don't know what I've said yet. How can you say it's not ridiculous?
Go on then, finish it.
You have to cling to something as ridiculous as a 14-year-old private joke between at least one person of whom didn't think it would ever be made public is evidence that you haven't really got anything substantive to say. Well, except, that's not fair. Except, of course, I've got loads of examples, but I can't tell you what they are. You're going to have to go and Google it yourself.
No, I think there's some manipulation of what I've said, and I think 14 years...
Feel free to remind me what the benefits are.
It shouldn't be a joke to anybody.
What are the benefits of Brexit?
Money.
What are the benefits?
It's public money, and it should be important to everybody listening and everybody not listening. It's public money, and there was none left. So spending money that wasn't there. You can't run a business that way.
Is the debt bigger or smaller today than it was then?
Bigger.
So whose fault is that then?
COVID.
Oh, I see. Right. So the global financial crisis had nothing to do with the state of the economy when Labour lost in 2010, but the failure of... So what was the figure before COVID? What was the debt before COVID, Anne?
You tell me.
No, you tell me, because you're the one that's insisting that Rishi Sunak is a safer pair of hands than the Labour Party. So you tell me.
The facts speak for themselves. Inflation has come down, hasn't it?
Yes, and it also went up. So your point is what?
It did go up, and the reason it went up was in part linked to COVID and in part linked to the legacy issues, of which, yes, the Tories are part of it.
Give me your favourite legacy issue. What's your favourite legacy issue, Anne?
My favourite legacy issue is what I've just said, which is that they were bankrupt. But I don't think we're going to get anywhere, so we'll agree to disagree.
No, we won't. I never agree to disagree with people who haven't got any evidence to support their position. So what I suspect you're going to do now is just hang up. I'm like Nostradamus.
When you really examine this caller's argument, the cracks start showing immediately. They keep circling back to that infamous note left in the Treasury, the so-called "there's no money left" message, and they talk about it like it's some grand confession, the smoking gun that proves Labour destroyed the economy. But here's the truth. It wasn't a scandal, it was an inside joke. A decades-old tradition between outgoing and incoming governments. Even Conservative chancellors had done the same before. It wasn't evidence of mismanagement. It was dark humour in the middle of an economic storm. Using that note as the cornerstone of your argument is like blaming a sorry out of coffee sign for a drought. It completely misses the point. Because what really happened, and what the caller conveniently skips over, is that the entire world was on fire economically. The 2008 global financial crisis wasn't a Labour experiment gone wrong. It was a worldwide collapse. Major banks failed overnight. Stock markets nosedived. Entire economies had to be rescued just to keep the lights on. And here's the part people forget. Britain's recovery strategy, under Gordon Brown and Alistair Darling, actually worked. It was so effective that other governments, including the US, adopted similar measures. Their leadership during that period wasn't reckless spending. It was crisis management at a scale most of us can barely imagine. So when a caller tries to paint that as Labour bankrupting the country, it's not just wrong, it's rewriting history. The host calls it out perfectly. If Labour were so incompetent, why did every major economy follow Britain's lead during the financial crisis? That question stops the caller cold. And then the Brexit defence gets even worse. The caller says, 51% voted for it, so it can't be ridiculous. But that's not evidence. That's just a head count. Popular doesn't mean beneficial. When asked to name even one clear Brexit benefit, they dodge again. I'm not going to fall into that trap. But that's not a trap. That's how debate works. If you say there are loads of great benefits, you should be able to name one. Control and independence sound powerful until you ask what they actually mean. And the double standard is glaring. Labour gets blamed for the 2010 debt caused by a global crash they didn't create. But when Conservatives push the debt even higher after COVID, suddenly it's all forgiven. Either crises matter or they don't. You can't have it both ways. The numbers don't lie. The debt was smaller when Labour left office than it is now, after 14 years of Conservative rule. And still, the caller insists they have loads of examples, just none they're willing to share. That's not a defence, that's an escape. And that right there is the biggest red flag of all, when someone claims to have proof but refuses to show it. Because go look it up yourself isn't an argument, it's a surrender. In any debate, the rule is simple. If you make a claim, you back it up. Otherwise, all you've got are opinions dressed as facts. And this caller kept shifting the goalposts. 1 minute it's the economy, the next it's Brexit, then suddenly it's that ancient Treasury note, and finally inflation. But let's be honest, celebrating inflation coming down after your own policies helped push it sky high isn't exactly a triumph. That's like setting your kitchen on fire and then bragging about how fast you grabbed the extinguisher. And that Rishi Sunak is a safer pair of hands argument? It collapses the second you check the data. The economy is stagnant, public services are under pressure, and the national debt is higher than when the Conservatives took over. Yet the caller can't name a single concrete policy or achievement to defend that claim. This is what makes exchanges like this so revealing. They sound convincing at first, full of confidence and slogans, but when you strip away the talking points, there's nothing underneath. No data, no examples, no accountability. Just recycled lines that crumble under scrutiny. And as James O'Brien shows once again, that's not debate, that's denial.